Hey yo, welcome back to the channel, and this is the 2024 remaster to my team building guide. Before we get further into the video, I do want to shout y'all out for getting me to 2K subs last month. I was planning to post this earlier, but I got so busy when school started I did not get to it until now, which is Labor Day weekend, and it's great. So now I have time to actually get this through. And I will say, if you please drop a like and even potentially drop a comment if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, because it took me a hell of a lot of time to get this out. There's a script. Just the editing alone it's insane, so I would really appreciate any support. So anyways, how this video is structured is the first part is actually going to be the team building guide itself, where I'm going to discuss how you can build a good team in Pokemon Brick Bronze, and really like factors that you would want to account for during your team building process. Following that, we're going to have a hidden power segment where I'll just be showing the hidden power combinations I found. So if you didn't know, it's a bit different in Pokemon Brick Bronze. Like the hidden power combinations you'll get off Smogon are going to be incorrect most of the time, so that's where you can get some accurate ones for most copies. And then the last segment of this video is going to be my set details for all the Pokemon I've used in Bronze Reformed. Unfortunately, I cannot get the set details for the other games I've featured in this channel because I cannot access them too easily. However, you will get access to the Bronze Reformed ones. So without further ado, let's get started with the team building guide. The first step that you want to take is determining what your priorities are in your team. Typically, there are two categories that people will fall into. Either they're going to go for an offensive team or they're going to go for a defensive team. Now, me personally, I would highly recommend defense, especially for more beginner players that are looking for something a lot easier to use. Defense is not only a lot more easier, but it's extremely effective against what people are typically going to be running in the Pokemon Brick Bronze meta. If you really come to think about it, you don't see many people running defensive Pokemon. Now, at the higher level you will, but at the lower level, most players are going to be running pseudo legendaries and starters, and just quick and strong Pokemon, which is really more of an offensive playstyle, and they typically don't really have much of an answer to defensive teams, which is exactly why I myself like to use defensive teams all the time, especially balanced teams. I started off with Stall, which was extremely good. However, it was hella boring, which is why I shifted towards Balance, which I say is probably one of the best archetypes right now, since it just counters everything so good. Like, you'll always have a pretty decent matchup against all teams, so that's what I would personally recommend. But you know, for people that want to have a bit more fun and you're willing to take the difficulty, offense is another kind of archetype you could consider. Now, for me personally, the next step once I figure out my priorities is to choose a Pokemon and centralize the team around that Pokemon. So typically, I also like to go for more balance-oriented teams, but I'm going to go for a Pokemon like Mega Charizard Y. And I would recommend Megas, since I feel like not using Megas is kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage, and it's also a lot of fun and probably the most prominent mechanic in Pokemon Brick Bronze. So since I kind of built the script around Mega Charizard Y, I'm going to be using it as the example here. So first, I want to account for what it brings to the table offensively. It actually has a pretty good speed stat at base 100, which means it outspeeds a lot of common Pokemon like Landorus, Terrian, and that can be really useful since it's an extremely hard-hitting wall breaker. The Sunlight boosts its Fire Blast and Flamethrowers to an insane level of damage, and not much can actually really switch into any of Charizard's fire attacks. Now, defensively, it brings to the table a ground immunity, and it's also a grass, bug, and fairy switching. So Pokemon like Xerneas, Serperior, and Volcarona have a hard time with Mega Charizard Y. So that's definitely something that you would want to account for. So now, to capitalize off of these traits, now that I know it's a hard-hitting wall breaker, a lot of times, a lot of Pokemon will switch in. They might survive Charizard's attacks, but they're going to be pretty low levels of HP, or they're not going to have a fun time really switching into Charizard's attacks. So what Charizard can do is just dish out high damage to a lot of Pokemon, and then in the late game, to capitalize off of Charizard's damage and I guess everything that left in its wake, I can have two sweepers like Weavile and Tapu Lele that might have like a choice scarf or might just have a naturally high speed stat, and they can come in and just pick off everything. Maybe like priority or just speed. Like, Tapu Lele and Charizard, in my opinion, function so well together. As Tapu Lele, once Charizard had knocked out most of the Pokemon that resist Tapu Lele's attack, it just comes in and destroys with Moonblast or Psychic. So another thing offensively is the Sunlight, and that's really going to boost the damage of fire attacks. So hard-hitting fire types like Darmanitan and Heatran love the Sunlight. They absolutely love it, and Darmanitan works on the physical side, so that's definitely something you can use, like if you really want to use the fire type offensively. Now defensively, Charizard functions as an Earthquake switch-in, as I said, although I really would not recommend fully relying on it. I would use it more as a mix-up, because a lot of the times these ground types are going to be running rock type coverage, since it just synergizes with the ground type so well, and Charizard has a 4 times weakness to the rock type. So you really don't want to rely on it too much, and you want to make sure you have another Earthquake switch-in to function alongside Charizard. Now, defensively, with the Sunlight, of course, it's going to be perfect for a Pokemon like Heatran or Excadrill, since it halves the damage of Water-type attacks, meaning that they can switch in a lot easier, and they're not really scared out as much by Water types like Rotom Wash or Greninja that you'll see all the time. Now let's look at its weaknesses that once again will need to be addressed. It has that major rock weakness, like I said. It has an electric weakness, it has a water weakness, and a major stealth rock weakness. So to account for its rock, electric, and water weaknesses, normally I put in a Pokemon or a pairing like Assault-Vest Tangrowth and Excadrill, because they synergize really well to handle those weaknesses, and they do other stuff. Besides just working with Charizard. Like Excadrill will bring Rapid Spin to the table, and Tangrowth will actually support a lot more Pokemon than just Charizard. So with its major Stealth Rock weakness, once again, Excadrill just such a perfect Pokemon to work with Mega Charizard Y, because it can Rapid Spin off the entry hazards. And Hatterene is another Pokemon I like pairing with Charizard Y, since it has that magic bounce, and it can function as a good special and I guess physical defensive wall. So it works pretty good with Charizard. Now with those components down, Mega Charizard Y is going to function way better than it would with a team that doesn't support it too well, since now it's going to have a team that can really synergize with what it brings to the table. Now once you have a team, like it might not even be Charizard, I do actually have a checklist of common things that you probably want to have available on your team. So one of the things I always have is an Earthquake switch-in. Ideally you want to have at least 1 to 2. Really the best way to do this is just getting a flying type, and a flying type that isn't weak to rock type attacks actually is a lot better than just a standard flying type. Like a Pokemon like Corviknight or Skarmory function well. Even Mandibuzz, even through its weakness, can actually do pretty good. Or you could even go for grass types, like a Tangrowth is a pretty good choice a lot of the times. And if you really want to go for it, you can go for bug types, but I don't really recommend it that often. Now the next thing you want is a Wall Switch / electric type switch-in. And I really just recommend having that, since a lot of times you're going to see Wall Switch on common Pokemon like Rotom Wash or Mega Manectric, and you want to have Pokemon that can actually switch into that without getting completely abused by the momentum switching. And really I just recommend getting a ground type for that, since you can kind of mix it up, and even having like a grass type like Tangrowth will bring a lot of utility when it comes to having a wall switch-in, since it resists electric and is pretty bulky too on the special side when you invest into it. Having a fairy switch-in is pretty important depending on the version you're playing. Now the one I play has a lot of Xerneases running around, so having a fire, bug, steel, poison type, something like that can go quite the distance against Xerneas. Having a dragon switch-in can be pretty useful. I wouldn't say it's anywhere near the most useful, but you will see outrage every now and then, and having a fairy type that can switch into that is really nice. And really just having an immunity to dragon types in general is nice, since they can be really powerful, so you want to have some sort of counter. Ice type switch-ins are almost essential. I just recommend going for a bulky water, since you will see them quite a lot on offensive teams, and they can be really deadly if you're not prepared for them. I myself have an experience with that. Having a dragon type can go quite a distance, since they can switch in pretty nicely against grass, water, and electric and fire types, which are extremely common in Pokemon Brick Bronze for lower level teams. So I definitely consider adding that to your team. A dark type switching can help, although it's not really as essential, since you'll see Sucker Punch every now and then and Knockoff on higher level teams. So So yeah, I recommend considering that. Having a flying type switching can be pretty nice. Ghost types can bring that to the table, and a flying type switching because you're gonna okay, so I guess it depends on the copy, but a lot of copies will have Shaman Sky, and you definitely want to be prepared for air slash spam. So I'd recommend probably considering like a steel type for a matter like that. Now for this checklist, I'm going to give you all an example of a Pokemon that could do really good. Now Glasgow is a perfect example of a Pokemon which knocks out multiple birds with one stone. Special offensive sets can switch into electric types. It's a great switch in as it doesn't take much damage from the rock type coverage that these ground types will normally run. It doubles as a good fighting switch in and a toxic absorber, which sucks for opposing stall teams. Glasgow is a good mix wall, however, you do need to account for the fact that it does struggle with bulky water types and ice type attackers. The solution would be to get a bulky water type, to be honest, or really, you could even kind of, get multiple different Pokemon, like a steel type and a grass type they can switch into both. I recommend a bulky water type like a Milotic, to be honest, since they synergize really good defensively, but that's definitely something for you to figure out. You don't have to have a resist for everything. Sometimes you can opt for a general wall to check Pokemon. Like if you watch the channel, you'll see a lot of defensive Tangrowth and a lot of defensive Milotics, since they function really good against neutral attackers. Now, super effective attackers are a different story, which is why you probably want to get some more niche defensive Pokemon. However, that's something to definitely account for when building your team. Since Hidden Power Ice does exist in a lot of electric types, I would actually recommend getting a secondary wall switch in, like Sylveon or Florges with their high special bulk, or Pokemon like Assault Vest Tangrowth that have Regenerator, which will basically cancel out the chip damage from wall switch. Now, here is a good list of Pokemon that bring pretty good defensive capability or value to the team. When selecting my ideal team defenses, I like to at least have one special and one defensive wall as general switch-ins. If you want to play it safe, you can also have one mixed wall to cover the type weaknesses of both. Tangrowth and Heatran are two defensive walls that synergize extremely well. You can toss in a Pokemon like Slowbro or Toxapex if you want to run double Regenerator with utility and an answer to occasional setup sweepers. Once you figure out your defenses, opting for utility can go a long way in the Pokemon Brick Bronze meta. The most important form of utility is a Pokemon that has a role in the entry hazards game. You need to base your entry hazard usage based on how much it benefits your team. Offensive teams benefit the most, while some defensive teams can also be helped by the passive damage of Stealth Rock and entry hazards. To be honest though, really any team can probably benefit from it, but I guess the amounts of help really varies between teams. So, Pokemon like Mega Alakazam, for example, may not normally be able to one-shot select Pokemon like maybe Zapdos with Psychic. However, with Stealth Rock chip damage, maybe it could. This is something you can figure out with experience from using a team. Sticky Web can enable Pokemon like Swords Dance, Landorus, Therian, or Mega Garchomp as examples. Now here is a good list of entry hazard Pokemon that you can consider. If you don't want to run entry hazards or have a team weak to opposing entry hazards, for example, Mega Charizard Y, which I just used, Volcarona, or Dragonite, you want to have a Rapid Spinner Defogger or Magic Bouncer. Here's a list of good Defoggers. Here's a list of good Rapid Spinners. And here are all the Magic Bouncing options. If your team has Pokemon that gets severely crippled by status, it can help to run a Pokemon with Heal Bell or Aromatherapy. Here are my recommended options. You could also consider getting a Wish Passer to rejuvenate Pokemon which can't heal easily. Heatran is a great example of a Pokemon that benefits from a move like Wish. Here is an example, or here's a list of examples of Wish Passers you can use. Although rare, you can also opt for screens to help on some offensive teams. In singles, Alola, Ninetales, Aurora Veil, or Klefki are great Pokemon for this role. If you notice you have a really slow team, sometimes Trick Room can be helpful. Here's a list of good Trick Room setters to consider. An absolute defensive essential for team building is speed control. You can handle this by either having a fast choice scarfer like Garchomp at base 102 speed, so it outspeeds common threats like Volcarona and Mega Charizard X even after a Dragon Dance or Quiver Dance boost, a prankster T-Wave Pokemon like Klefki that isn't scared of dark types, or a strong priority attacker like Technician Sizer or Sucker Punch Bisharp are examples. When defensively team building, I would highly recommend looking into common offensive threats and how you can counter them. For example, physical/special setup sweepers like Mega Charizard X, Garchomp, Volcarona, Serperior, and Gyarados are really common in Brick Bronze, and you want to make sure you actually have an answer to them. You know, you're going to see a lot of priority attackers like Mega Mobile, Bisharp, and Mega Sizer, and you want to make sure you have a counter to those too. I personally would also take time to look at the higher tiers of Smogon, OU, UU, RU, and the ban list tiers. Above those are ones I would consider, and make sure that you actually have a pretty decent answer to the Pokemon that you see in those tiers. Some Pokemon actually tend to be pretty rare, even for OU, like Magearna, Keldeo, and Victini. I swear I've literally never seen any of them in the competitive scene, so I wouldn't worry about them as much, but just make sure you have a net wall for everything these tiers, some sort of answer. It doesn't have to be a perfect check, but you want to at least have something that you can do, because they're going to be pretty common in Brick Bronze as well. If your meta is inclusive of Ubers, typically, in my opinion, Eternatus, Kyogre, Groudon, Mega Mewtwo X, and Mega Mewtwo Y, Xerneas, Mega Rayquaza, and Yveltal are some of the most dangerous legendaries that you definitely want to be prepared for. Water Absorb counters Kyogre pretty hard, so Gastrodon is a pretty reliable answer, or even Cradily or Seismitoad can actually work pretty decently too against Pokemon like Kyogre. Fire types like Skeledirge completely shut down Xerneas. Pokemon like Heatran, Volcarona, and Klefki also make sense depending on the set that the Xerneas player is running. So make sure you have an answer to Xerneas if you have Ubers in your meta. Eternatus is countered badly by Heatran. Any steel type that doesn't fear fire should work down to shut Xerneas completely down. Bulky water types shut down Groudon pretty good. Bulky psychic types like Cresselia or Mega Slowbro destroy Mega Mewtwo X without question. Priority like Sucker Punch or niche picks like Assault Vest, Alolan Muck shut down Mega Mewtwo Y pretty nicely. The only way to beat Mega Rayquaza, to be honest, is to Revenge Killer or have a Pokemon bulky enough not to get one-shotted while being able to hit back super effectively. A bulky fairy type like Hatterene can lift a +1 Dragon Descent and hit back super effectively. Any form of status from a prankster Pokemon can hurt Rayquaza alongside items like the Focus Sash on a hard-hitting Pokemon. Choice Scar's Fairy or Dragon types might be effective to minimize losses from Mega Rayquaza. Latios can be perfect depending on the Rayquaza set. Protean, Greninja, or Norwarn are examples of other Pokemon that would work to kill Mega Rayquaza out of revenge. Although once again, it's really difficult to prepare for. There's a reason it's in Anything Goes rather than Ubers. So really at that point, good luck if you have to face someone using it, but those are some potential counters you could look into. Once I get past the team defense, I look into investing in my offensive capabilities. For Pokemon like Mega Charizard Y, I'll account for the fact that something like Chansey or Blissey, which are pretty common choices in Pokemon Brick Bronze, can easily switch into Charizard and shut it down. So how do I counter this? It's very easy. I want to use a Pokemon like Weavile. It corresponds amazingly with Charizard as it can switch in on Chansey and Blissey, and it can really do heavy damage with Pursuit. And really probably knock them out of commission, to be honest. And it also brings a lot more to the team past just shutting down Chansey. After going through my team building process, I'll most likely have a team that ends up looking like this, where there's a balance between offensive Pokemon and defensive Pokemon. My best recommendation for all players is to refer to Smogon when team building. For Pokemon like Mega Charizard Y, you can not only access the current generation set details, but the viable set details for future generations. I would definitely review the checks and counters tab alongside the teammates tab to really maximize the team options that you want to have. I'd also review the article based on cores that's made by Smogon. It will be linked in the description below, and I'd also review different playstyles in an article made by Smogon. To find out your team effectiveness, the best strategy is to experiment with players to find out your weakness. It's not easy to perfect everything on the first try, but through battles and experiences, you'll be able to progressively improve your team. For people looking for good and simple megas to start off with, my recommendations would be to consider Mega Charizard X or Mega Charizard Y. Both are different, but they are really easy to use and they're extremely viable. Mega Aerodactyl is a great Pokemon to consider since it's fast and hits really hard. Mega Sizer is another pretty easy to use Mega that's pretty good. Mega Metagross only attacks, it's very simple and it's really good and fast. Mega Lopunny, really fast, hits pretty hard. I'd highly recommend it. Some might be asking, why is this section here when I can find this information online? As I explained in the introduction, for almost all the brick bronze copies I've played, the hidden power combinations have been messed up. You can try the IV combinations yourself that are posted on Smogon, you'll see exactly what I mean. I'm sure some larger copies might have it fixed, I'm sure that some might. However, not all of them do. If you happen to be in any of the broken copies, this is a list of the types I found, spending a few hours troubleshooting a wild Pokemon. Really, I was just trying to find hidden power ice, and I happened to find a lot of them on the way there. Not all of them may be perfectly accurate, but I'm pretty sure they are. Ice and fire are 100% correct, as I've literally used them multiple times on some of the Pokemon during my team building. The rest you can use at your own risk. I have not confirmed every other one except fire and ice, so I'm not too sure if they'll work or not, but that's up to you to find out. If you aren't sure if your copy has the fixed hidden power combinations, test one of them to find out and see if it lines up. If it does, then this is a good list you can refer to, as it should be pretty accurate for the most part. And need I say, I have not found all 18 type combinations. That's because a lot of them actually aren't even ever used, to be honest, but the ones I did find I've linked below, and perhaps if you guys want to see all of them, I might go ahead and actually try finding them, but for now, this is what y'all are going to get. If you've been watching since the really start of this video, I really gotta applaud you for that. Dang, has it been a long time. But anyways, as it may already seem evident, the last 12 minutes of this video will just be me going through all the different sets of Pokemon I've used here in Project Bronze Reforms. I know a lot of people have been asking for set details, and this is probably the best way I can do it. And need I say, I definitely will be making new teams and new sets and whatnot, and for those I'll probably just make another I guess a video that just covers all of my newer Pokemon sets, or maybe I will actually start trying to work on Pokepaste. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but anyways, you will also see some of these Pokemon, like this Celesteela right here, does not have the right moveset, and that's because it's probably a project I've been working on, or it's something that I decided to scrap. I do also have multiple different variations of different Pokemon, like Heatran, for example. I know I have one that has an air balloon and one that has leftovers, so I can easily switch between them, because really I like to change my usage of them based on if I have an easy earthquake switching or if I don't. Then sometimes I might actually want the air balloon and Heatran. So yeah, you'll see a bit of everything. If you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments down below, and hopefully I'll be able to respond. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the video.